I never thought I'd be the type of person to cheat on my husband. But there I was, lips locked with my boss in the supply closet at work, praying no one would walk in and discover our dirty little secret. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought it might burst out of my chest. Part of me wanted to push him away and run, but a bigger part of me craved his touch like a drug I couldn't quit. "We can't keep doing this, Mark," I whispered, trying to catch my breath as his lips moved to my neck. "What if someone finds out?" He pulled back just enough to look me in the eyes, his piercing blue gaze making my knees weak. "Let them," he said with a devilish grin. "I'm not ashamed of how I feel about you, Olivia." "Are you?" The guilt hit me like a punch to the gut. I thought of my husband, Jake, probably sitting at home right now with our kids, completely unaware that his wife was betraying him in the most intimate way possible. How had I let things get this far? It all started 6 months ago, when Jake got that big promotion at work. I was so proud of him at first, but I had no idea how much it would change our lives. The long hours, the constant stress. It was like living with a stranger. I tried to be supportive, but the loneliness was eating me alive. That's when Mark swooped in, all charm and attentiveness. He was everything Jake used to be. I was starved for affection. One innocent flirtation led to another, and before I knew it, I was in way over my head. Now here I was, trapped between my growing feelings for Mark and my loyalty to Jake. I knew I needed to end things with Mark, but every time I tried, he'd say it would do something to reel me back in. It was like he had some kind of power over me that I couldn't resist. "Earth to Olivia," Mark's voice snapped me back to reality. "Where'd you go just now?" I forced a smile, pushing down the rising panic in my chest. "Sorry, I was just thinking about the presentation we have tomorrow. Maybe we should get back to work." Mark's eyes narrowed slightly, and I saw a flash of something dangerous in them. "You're not having second thoughts about us, are you? Because I thought I made it clear what would happen if you're trying to end this." A chill ran down my spine as I remembered his thinly veiled threats. If Jake ever found out about the affair, it would destroy him. But if I tried to break things off with Mark, it made it clear he had no problem blowing up my entire life out of spite. I was trapped, suffocating under the weight of my own bad decisions. How the hell was I going to get out of this mess? Little did I know, things were about to get so much worse. The fluorescent lights of the office seemed harsher than usual as I made my way back to my desk, trying to smooth down my hair and straighten my blouse. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type, my mind racing with thoughts of what I'd just done. Again. "Hey, Liv, you okay?" My coworker Sarah's chipper voice made me jump. "You look a little flushed." I forced a smile, hoping it didn't look as fake as it felt. "Oh yeah, I'm fine. Just a bit stressed about the Johnson account, you know." Sarah nodded sympathetically. "Tell me about it. This deadline is killing all of us. But hey, at least we've got Mark leading the team, right? He always seems to pull miracles out of thin air." I mumbled something non-committal, my stomach churning at the mention of Mark's name. If only Sarah knew the kind of miracles he was really capable of. The rest of the workday crawled by in a haze of guilt and anxiety. By the time 5 o'clock rolled around, I was a bundle of nerves. The thought of going home to Jake filled me with equal parts, longing and dread. Part of me wanted nothing more than to curl up in his arms and confess everything, begging for forgiveness. But I knew I couldn't. The stakes were too high. As I pulled into our driveway, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for another evening of pretending everything was fine. The sound of laughter drifted through the open windows, and for a moment, my heart lifted. It had been so long since I'd heard Jake laugh like that. I walked in to find Jake on the living room floor, our 2 kids climbing all over him like a jungle gym. 8-year-old Ethan had Jake in a headlock, while 5-year-old Zoe was hanging off his back, both of them giggling uncontrollably. Mom, Zoe squealed when she saw me, launching herself off Jake's back and into my arms. Daddy's home early, and he's being silly. I held her tight, breathing in the sweet smell of her shampoo. "I can see that, sweetie. What a nice surprise." Jake disentangled himself from Ethan and stood up, a slightly sheepish grin on his face. "Hey, honey." I managed to wrap things up at the office early for once. Thought I'd surprise everyone with a family night. Maybe order some pizza, watch a movie. For a moment, I felt like I'd stepped into a time machine. This was the Jake I'd fallen in love with, spontaneous, playful, present, the Jake that had been missing for months now. That sounds perfect, I said, meaning it with every fibre of my being. As we settled in for our impromptu family night, I found myself studying Jake's face, searching for traces of the man I'd married. He looked tired, with new lines around his eyes that hadn't been there a year ago. But when he smiled at me over the kids' heads, I saw a glimmer of the old spark. Later that night, after we put the kids to bed, Jake and I found ourselves alone on the couch. An awkward silence stretched between us, filled with all the things we'd left unsaid over the past months. Liv, Jake started, his voice hesitant. I know things have been difficult lately. With the new position and all the pressure, I haven't been the best husband or father. I felt tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. Jake, you don't have to. He held up a hand, cutting me off gently. No, please, let me say this. I've been so focused on proving myself at work that I lost sight of what really matters. You and the kids, you're everything to me. I'm sorry I've been so distant. The lump in my throat threatened to choke me. Here was Jake apologizing to me when I was the one who betrayed him in the worst way possible. The guilt was overwhelming. I love you, Olivia, Jake said, reaching out to take my hand. I know I haven't shown it lately, but I do. More than anything, I want us to be okay. Are we okay? I looked into his earnest blue eyes, so different from Mark's calculating gaze, and felt my heart breaking. I wanted more than anything to turn back time, to undo my mistakes, and be the wife Jake deserved. We're okay, I lied, squeezing his hand and forcing a smile. I love you too. As Jake pulled me into a hug, I buried my face in his shoulder, letting a few tears escape. He mistook them for tears of happiness, murmuring soothing words and stroking my hair. Little did he know, I was crying for the mess I'd made of our lives, and for the storm I knew was coming. The next morning, I woke up feeling more conflicted than ever. Jake's words from the night before echoed in my mind, clashing with memories of heated moments with Mark in the supply closet. I knew what I had to do, but the thought of facing Mark filled me with dread. At the office, I steeled my nerves and knocked on Mark's door during lunch break. He looked up from his computer, a slow smile spreading across his face. Olivia, he purred, leaning back in his chair. To what do I owe the pleasure? I closed the door behind me, my heart racing. Mark, we need to talk. About us. This, whatever it is between us, it needs to stop. His smile faded, replaced by a look of cool calculation. Oh, and what brought on this sudden attack of conscience? It's not sudden, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I've been feeling guilty for weeks. My husband, my kids, they don't deserve this. Neither do you, really. It's not fair to anyone. Mark stood up slowly, circling his desk until he was standing right in front of me. Life's not fair, sweetheart. But what we have, it's special. You can't tell me you don't feel it too. I took a step back, trying to create some distance between us. What I feel doesn't matter. This is wrong. And you know it? Please, Mark. Let's just end this now, before anyone gets hurt. His eyes hardened, all traces of charm vanishing. Before anyone gets hurt? It's a little late for that, don't you think? What do you think would happen to your precious family if Jake found out about us? A chill ran down my spine. You wouldn't. Wouldn't I? Mark's voice was dangerously soft. I've invested a lot in this relationship, Olivia. I'm not about to let you walk away just because you're feeling a little guilty. Think about what you're risking here. Your marriage, your kids, your career. Is that really what you want? I felt trapped, cornered by my own mistakes and Mark's manipulation. What do you want from me, Mark? He reached out, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. I flinched at his touch, but didn't pull away. I want you to stop overthinking things. We're good together, Olivia. In the boardroom and the bedroom. Why mess with a good thing? I knew I should argue, should stand my ground and end things once and for all. But the fear of losing everything paralyzed me. In that moment, I hated myself for being so weak. Okay, I whispered, defeat washing over me. You win. Mark's triumphant smile made my skin crawl. That's my girl. Now, why don't we seal the deal with a little afternoon delight? As he pulled me in for a kiss, I closed my eyes, trying to shut out the voice in my head screaming that I was making a terrible mistake. The weeks that followed were a blur of guilt, stolen moments with Mark, and an ever-growing distance between Jake and me. Every time Jake tried to reconnect, to recapture the spark from our family night, I found myself pulling away. The weight of my secret was crushing me, making it impossible to be the wife and mother my family deserved. Things came to a head at the annual company Christmas party. I'd managed to convince Jake to come, hoping that being around my coworkers might help bridge the gap between us. It was a decision I would soon regret. The party was in full swing, the alcohol flowing freely, and the dance floor packed. Jake and I were making small talk with some of my colleagues when Mark sauntered over, a drink in hand and a predatory gleam in his eye. Well, he said, his words slightly slurred. If it isn't the lovely Olivia and her husband. He said the word like it left a bad taste in his mouth. Jake, oblivious to the undercurrent of tension, extended his hand. Nice to meet you. I'm Jake. Mark ignored the outstretched hand, instead turning to me with a smirk. Olivia, darling, you've been holding out on us. You never mentioned your husband was so quaint. I felt the blood drain from my face. Mark, I didn't think. But he was on a roll now, emboldened by alcohol and his own arrogance. Tell me, Jake, what is it you do again? Something terribly important, I'm sure, to keep you away from this gorgeous creature so often. Jake's smile had frozen, a confused look in his eyes. I'm an account manager at Preston and Lloyd. It does keep me busy, but... Mark let out a derisive laugh. An account manager? How utterly fascinating. And here, I thought Olivia's husband must be curing cancer or brokering world peace, the way she goes on about your important work. The atmosphere around us had grown thick with tension. I could see the hurt and anger building in Jake's eyes, while Mark looked positively gleeful at the havoc he was wreaking. Mark, that's enough, I said firmly, grabbing Jake's arm. We should go. But Mark wasn't finished. He leaned in close to Jake, his voice dropping to a stage whisper. Word of advice, Jake, old boy. When you have a woman like Olivia at home, you might want to pay a little more attention. Never know who might be waiting to. Pick up your slack. It happened so fast, I almost missed it. 1 second Mark was smirking in Jake's face, the next he was sprawled on the floor, blood gushing from his nose. Jake stood over him, fists still clenched, chest heaving. The party ground to a halt, all eyes on the scene unfolding before them. Mark struggled to his feet, wiping blood from his face with the back of his hand. You'll regret that, he snarled, lunging at Jake. What followed was a blur of fists and bodies. I screamed for them to stop, but my voice was lost in the chaos. It took 3 of Jake's co-workers to finally pull them apart. Jake's eye was already swelling, his knuckles bloody. But it was the look in his eyes that terrified me. A mixture of rage, hurt, and dawning realization. Without a word, he turned and stormed out of the party. I ran after him, my heart pounding in my chest. Jake, wait. I called, catching up to him in the parking lot. Please let me explain. He whirled on me, his eyes blazing. Explain what, Olivia? How my wife's boss seems to know an awful lot about our marriage. Or maybe you'd like to explain why you didn't stop him when he was humiliating me in front of everyone. I reached for him, but he jerked away as if my touch burned. Jake, it's not what you think. Mark, he's a jerk. He was drunk and saying stupid things. Don't lie to me, Jake's voice was low and dangerous. I saw the way he looked at you. The way you couldn't meet my eyes. Tell me the truth, Olivia. Are you sleeping with him? The world seemed to stop spinning. This was the moment I'd been dreading for months, the moment when all my lies and betrayals would come crashing down around me. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. My silence was all the confirmation Jake needed. Without another word, he got in the car and drove away, leaving me standing alone in the cold parking lot. The days that followed were a nightmare. Jake moved into the guest room, barely speaking 2 words to me. The tension in the house was unbearable, affecting even the kids. Ethan grew sullen and withdrawn, while Zoe burst into tears at the slightest provocation. I tried everything I could think of to reach Jake, to explain, to beg for forgiveness. But he shut me out completely, his silence more devastating than any angry words could have been. One night, about a week after the disastrous Christmas party, I couldn't take it anymore. I cornered Jake in the kitchen, after the kids had gone to bed. We can't go on like this, I said, my voice cracking. Please, Jake, talk to me. Yell at me, Anything is better than this silence. Jake looked at me, and the pain in his eyes nearly brought me to my knees. What do you want me to say, Olivia? That I forgive you for throwing away 10 years of marriage? That I'm okay with you fucking your boss while I was busting my ass trying to provide for our family? His words hit me like physical blows. I'm sorry, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. Jake laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. But it did happen, didn't it? You made that choice. Over and over again. I know, I said, sinking into a chair at the kitchen table. I know I screwed up. But I love you, Jake. You and the kids. You're my whole world. Please tell me how to fix this. I'll do anything. For a long moment, Jake just stared at me. When he finally spoke, his voice was tired and defeated. I don't know if this can be fixed, Liv. I look at you, and all I can see is you with him. I don't know how to get past that. The finality in his tone terrified me. Aren't you saying you want a divorce? Jake ran a hand through his hair, looking older and more worn than I'd ever seen him. I don't know what I want. I just know I can't keep living like this. I think I need some time to figure things out. My heart felt like it was being ripped from my chest. Time. What does that mean? It means I'm going to stay with my brother for a while, Jake said, not meeting my eyes. I need space to think, to decide what I want to do next. But what about the kids? I asked, panic rising in my throat. What are we going to tell them? Jake's face softened slightly at the mention of our children. We'll tell them I have to go away for work for a little while. They don't need to know the details. Not yet, anyway. I knew I should argue, should fight harder to keep my family together. But the guilt and shame were overwhelming. What right did I have to ask Jake to stay after what I'd done? Okay, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, if that's what you need. Jake nodded, then turned to leave the kitchen. At the doorway, he paused, looking back at me with a mixture of sadness and something else I couldn't quite identify. I did love you, you know, more than anything. The past tense cut through me like a knife. As I watched him walk away, I realized that my actions might have destroyed not just my marriage, but the very foundation of the life we built together. The next morning, Jake was gone before I woke up. He left a note saying he'd called to check on the kids in a few days. The house felt empty without him, the silence oppressive. Telling Ethan and Zoe that their dad had to go away for work was one of the hardest things I've ever done. So cried, not understanding why Daddy had to leave without saying goodbye. Ethan, always too perceptive for his age, looked at me with suspicion in his eyes. I wondered how long it would be before he figured out the truth. The days that followed were a blur of guilt, loneliness, and desperate attempts to keep some semblance of normalcy for the kids. I threw myself into being supermom, trying to compensate for Jake's absence with elaborate meals and planned activities. But nothing could fill the Jake-shaped hole in our lives. At work, things were just as complicated. Mark had taken a leave of absence after the Christmas party incident, but his presence lingered like a dark cloud over the office. Rumors flew about what had really happened, and I could feel the speculative glances and whispered conversations whenever I walked by. It was Sarah who finally cornered me in the break room, her usual cheerful demeanor replaced by concern. Liv, what's going on? You've been like a zombie for weeks. And where's Jake? He hasn't been to any of the office events lately. I stared into my coffee cup, unable to meet her eyes. Jake's away on business. Things have been a little stressful at home. Sarah's eyes narrowed. This wouldn't have anything to do with what happened at the Christmas party, would it? People are talking, Liv. About you and Mark. My head snapped up, panic rising in my chest. What are they saying? Sarah sighed, placing a comforting hand on my arm. Nothing concrete. But after that fight between Jake and Mark, well, people are putting two and two together. And not coming up before, if you know what I mean. I felt the walls closing in on me. My personal life was in shambles, and now my professional reputation was at stake too. Sarah, I don't know what to do. I've made such a mess of everything. To my surprise, Sarah pulled me into a tight hug. Oh, honey, we all make mistakes, but you're not alone, okay? Whatever's going on, we'll figure it out together. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I could find a way out of this nightmare. But life had other plans. The very next day, I received a summons to the HR department. My heart sank as I read the email, knowing that my worst fears were about to be realized. The HR manager, a stern-faced woman named Janet, wasted no time getting to the point. Ms. Thompson, we've received some troubling reports about your relationship with Mr. Holloway. Given the nature of these allegations and Mr. Holloway's position as your direct supervisor, we have no choice but to launch a formal investigation. I felt like I was going to be sick. I understand. What does this mean for my job? Janet's expression softened slightly. For now, you'll be placed on paid administrative leave while we conduct our investigation. I'm sorry, Olivia, but we have to take these matters seriously. As I packed up my desk, ignoring the curious stares of my coworkers, I felt like my entire world was crumbling around me. I'd lost my husband, and now I was on the verge of losing my job too. How had things spiraled so out of control? The drive home was a blur of tears and recriminations. I kept replaying every moment with Mark in my head, wondering how I could have been so blind to the consequences of my actions. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw a familiar car parked on the street. My heart leaped into my throat as I recognized Jake's brother's SUV. Was Jake back? Had he come to his senses? But it wasn't Jake waiting for me on the porch. It was his sister, Megan, her face a mask of barely contained fury. "We need to talk," she said, brushing past me into the house. I followed her into the living room, my legs feeling like jelly. "Megan, what are you doing here? Where are the kids?" "Relax," she said, her voice cold. "Mom picked them up from school. They're fine, which is more than I can say for my brother." I sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. "How is he?" Megan's eyes flashed with anger. "How do you think he is, Olivia?" "He's devastated, heartbroken, and frankly, I don't blame him one bit." "I never meant to hurt him," I whispered, tears welling up in my eyes. "Oh, spare me the crocodile tears," Megan snapped. "You made your choices. Now you get to live with the consequences." Her words hit me like a physical blow. What? What are you saying?" Megan pulled an envelope from her purse and tossed it onto the coffee table. "Jake asked me to give you this. It's divorce papers, Olivia. He wants to end it." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I stared at the envelope, unable to process what was happening. "No," I said, shaking my head. "No, he can't. We can work this out. We have to, for the kids." "You should have thought about the kids before you started screwing your boss," Megan said, her voice dripping with disdain. "Jake's lawyer will be in touch about custody arrangements." As Megan turned to leave, a sudden, desperate thought occurred to me. "Wait, please, Megan. Can you just tell Jake I'm sorry? That I love him and the kids more than anything? That I'll do whatever it takes to make this right?" For a moment, Megan's hard expression wavered. Then she shook her head. "You had your chance to make things right, Olivia. You blew it. Now you have to live with your choices." With that, she was gone, leaving me alone with the divorce papers and the shattered remains of my life. The next few weeks passed in a haze of grief, guilt, and frantic attempts to salvage what was left of my life. I hired a lawyer, hoping against hope that we could find a way to avoid a messy divorce. But Jake was adamant. He wanted out, and he wanted primary custody of the kids. The custody battle was brutal. Jake's lawyer painted me as an unfit mother, using my affair with Mark as evidence of my moral failings. My own lawyer did his best to portray me as a devoted mother who had made a terrible mistake, but was committed to making things right. Through it all, I clung to the hope that Jake would come to his senses, that he'd remember the love we once shared and give our marriage another chance. Every time I saw him in court, his eyes cold and distant, that hope died a little more. The final blow came when Mark was called to testify. I had hoped he would have enough decency to downplay our relationship, to spare me and my family further pain. But Mark, bitter about losing his own job over the scandal, held nothing back. He described our affair in excruciating detail, painting me as the aggressor who had pursued him relentlessly. He even hinted that I had used our relationship to gain professional advantages, implying that I was not only an adulterer, but also ethically compromised in my work. As I listened to Mark's testimony, feeling Jake's eyes boring into me from across the courtroom, I realized the full extent of the damage I had done. Not only had I destroyed my marriage and hurt my children, but I had also allowed myself to be manipulated by a man who clearly never cared about me at all. The judge's decision was swift and devastating. Jake was awarded primary custody of the children, with me granted only limited visitation rights. The house would be sold, and the proceeds split between us. My career, once so promising, was in tatters. As I packed up my things, preparing to move into a small apartment across town, I couldn't help but reflect on how quickly life can change. Just a few months ago, I had a loving husband, a beautiful family, and a successful career. Now, I was starting over from scratch, with nothing but regrets and what-ifs to keep me company. The day I moved out of our family home was one of the hardest of my life. Ethan refused to speak to me, his young face a mask of hurt and betrayal. So clung to me, crying and begging me not to go. As Jake gently pried her away from me, I saw a flicker of the man I had fallen in love with all those years ago, kind, patient, an amazing father. The knowledge that I had thrown all of that away for a tawdry affair with Mark made me physically ill. "I'm so sorry," I whispered to Jake as I prepared to leave. "For everything." Jake looked at me for a long moment, his eyes filled with a mixture of pain and pity. "I know you are, Liv, but sorry doesn't fix this. It doesn't erase what you did." As I drove away from the only home my children had ever known, I felt like I was leaving a part of myself behind. The weight of my mistakes pressed down on me, threatening to crush me entirely. But as I unpacked my meager belongings in my new apartment, I made a promise to myself. I would not let this be the end of my story. Somehow, someway, I would find a way to rebuild my life, to be the mother my children deserved, and maybe, just maybe, to earn back a fraction of the trust I had so carelessly thrown away. It wouldn't be easy. The road ahead was long and fraught with challenges. But for the sake of my children, for the sake of the woman I used to be and hoped to become again, I had to try. As I fell asleep the first night in my new place, alone and afraid, but determined to face whatever came next, I couldn't help but think of all the choices that had led me to this point. The stolen glances, the illicit touches, the lies upon lies, each one a step down a path I never should have taken. If I could go back and talk to myself from a year ago, what would I say? Would I warn her about the pain and destruction her actions would cause? Would I beg her to appreciate what she had before it was too late? But time travel wasn't an option. All I could do now was move forward, one day at a time, and hope that someday, somehow, I could find a way to make things right. As I drifted off to sleep, my last conscious thought was a plea to whatever higher power might be listening. Please, give me the strength to face tomorrow. Give me the wisdom to learn from my mistakes. And most of all, give me the chance to be the mother and person I know I can be.